folks. Lauren here from This Week in Weed. We're back, baby. So up next, we get a visit from the Weed Czar. I talk a bit about all the noise this last week from the government talking about medical cannabis trials that don't include medical cannabis again, and how GWUK is starting to make a move for the synthetic cannabis market. It's all happening right here. So, light those bongs, huff those hookahs, puff that pipe, and devour them dubs. This Week in Weed is next.
This Week in Weed is about fixing the broken cannabis laws in Australia and calling BS when the media and politicians deem it necessary to do so. No illegal activity is suggested or condoned by this video. Thank you for watching. Let's do it.
Weeds are here. Wherever weeds are, I want to be there. Call me. Just a quick snippet to talk a little bit about the medical cannabis trials that have been announced a lot in the paper recently. Those of us in Australia that are involved in cannabis law reform, we see an awful lot of this stuff happen on smaller scales, but there's a momentum change. The government, the media, everybody's starting to become more aware of the facts. And this isn't a matter of this works, this doesn't work, this is my opinion, this is your opinion. This is about facts. So let's just deal with facts at the moment. Currently, the government has promised around $50 million in medical cannabis trials in Australia. But there's an important point that the government has also mentioned, never at the same time. You know, you never see Clark Kent and Superman in the room at the same time. You also never hear all the sound bites and facts at the same time because they would contradict each other. So recently the government said that there'll be no grows of cannabis in Australia till 2017, 2018 at the earliest. This is forgetting about any trials after that. Meanwhile, the government has also reminded everybody that nobody doing medical cannabis trials in Australia can use medical cannabis until the laws are fixed, and there's nothing even on the table to fix those, thus the grow of 2018. So people are confused saying, wait a minute, how can you not be having anything medical cannabis in Australia until 2018, yet they're talking about trials now? The reason being is that some of these trials actually won't take place, but those that do take place, because cannabis is still illegal, will not take place with cannabis. So let's just go over that again. Medical cannabis trials in Australia that don't use medical cannabis. They use a synthetic element of cannabis, which we learned from a company called GWUK, specifically Ethan Russo. In 2011, he discovered something called the entourage effect of the plant. And what he discovered is if you take certain elements out of regular whole cannabis, it gives you interesting things, but it doesn't give you cannabis. You can't take elements out and it still works the same way. They discovered much earlier, in 1968, that if you were to give humans elements of cannabis, those elements all do different things. Some good, some nothing terrible or bad, but it doesn't react the same way as if you take whole cannabis. This means medicine doesn't work right, things don't work right. In the meantime, they've discovered this thing called the ECS, which is the endocannabinoid system, and this was also discovered by Ethan Russo in 2011. And basically what it talks about is how we have all these receptors in our body, which are basically part of the endocannabinoid system. If you don't have this element in your body naturally, as you may not have vitamin C, you can get rickets, you can get the vitamin deficiency, but this vitamin deficiency is an ECS deficiency. By all means, Google everything I'm saying, all the information is there. So if you have a medical cannabis trial without cannabis in it, to where certain elements have been taken out, such as THC, it's no longer cannabis, but it's not to say it may have some medicinal purposes, but they're not the same issues, and they're not the same degree of issues as if you're taking whole cannabis. This is the issue. So if they have a trial in Australia, you cannot use cannabis, so they'll be using these synthetics from a company called GWUK. You may have heard me mention a minute ago, they discovered that if you mess with these certain elements, some will work, some will not work. Some of the ones that would not work is one called Epidiolex. That would not work for any treatment that you use cannabis natural for. Cannabis naturally has a high ratio of THC to CBD, 10 to 20 to 1. THC higher than CBD, that's naturally how it appears in cannabis. It's pretty much part of the definition of cannabis. You can synthesize and you can create genetically modified cannabis that actually has a higher CBD or even an equal CBD to THC, but that isn't cannabis naturally. That's normally done with industrial hemp, which is high CBD, and then you have the THC. But there's this thing with the entourage effect. They don't work well together if they're not in the natural ratios of 10 or 20 to 1 CBD. So now you have this new medication called Epidiolex. Now what that does is that's almost 100% CBD. So again, it will offer you no medicinal purposes for anything that has to do with a THC needed ailment. So for instance, pain, a lot of the different epilepsy seizures require a certain level of THC to work with the CBD, otherwise it doesn't work. This is the entourage effect. So when you see the Australian government offering new trials of medical cannabis before 2018, there's no medical cannabis going to be in it. It's going to be synthetic drugs. And this is the thing that a lot of the law reform folks, such as myself and others, are trying to make sure that the media don't just go by sound bites. They fact check. When the government calls a bit of a pooey and says things that may not necessarily in its entirety in good faith be correct, then people are also calling BS to that. It's all about facts, not fear, and that's what we need to consider to strive to. So keep watching us, and there's links to all the files I'm referring to, the endocannabinoid system deficiency, the actual trials, even a video showing that the folks at GWUK that make all these synthetic drugs, their strategy, pretty much of how they're trying to stall and delay medical, regular whole cannabis from getting to the streets, and even using terrible references about cannabis that really just aren't true, and people will know when they see the video. So I hope that helps a bit. Ask any questions, follow along. Peace.
Well, now it's all going to pot, whether we like it or not. Best I can tell, the world's gone to hell, and we're sure gonna miss it a lot. All of the whiskey in Lynchburg, Tennessee just couldn't hit the spot. I got $100